In the increasingly competitive world of mid-sized off-road trucks, is it more important to be proven, reliable, more affordable, and well-respected, or just the cooler option? My name is Thomas, and today I'm tinkering on both Chevrolet's and Nissan's idea of a trail-conquering machine. It is Japan versus America, old versus new, the PRO-4X versus the ZR2. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe. Let's get right into the information. To start off with, as I'm sure you'd expect, both of these trucks, being mid-sized off-roaders, have quite a lot in common. Both the Chevrolet Colorado ZR2 and Nissan Frontier PRO-4X have ditched the inline-4 gasoline engine that you can find on cheaper trims of these models, and instead have gone with the no mucking about mentality and come standard with the V6 engines. They also have off-road purposed tires and rims, of course upgraded shock absorbers, both have a locking rear differential, reversing camera, sit higher off the ground than normal, both sharing the same 8.9 inches of ground clearance, and wear plenty of badging to let everyone know that what you're driving is not just a normal mid-sized truck. But one of the best examples of what sets these two apart is a relevant and successfully adopted change that's been made to the truck world over recent years. That being the evolution of the tailgate. On the Frontier, it's heavy and it's manual. You have to do everything by yourself, while on the ZR2, it's light, it's easy, and also if I wanted to, I can use my pinky to close it. Absolute piece of cake. And while yes, you can technically do the same thing on the Frontier, it's a bit more manual and I wouldn't recommend it. The ZR2 is more of a party trick in that regards, and well, this just hurts your pinky. The same actually applies for the hoods on the two vehicles as well. With the Colorado, the first thing you'll notice is not only is it much lighter, but on top of that, it is also, thanks to a little thing called hydraulics, going to do the work for you. Whereas if we bring it over to the Frontier, not only is it a heavier hood, but also you have to do all of the work, and when you eventually get it to the top, you have to lock it into place yourself if you want it to stay up. It's just old-fashioned. Furthermore, the ZR2 comes with two engine options. The gasoline V6 you see here that puts out 308 horsepower with an 8-speed transmission for your day-to-day driving, or the more expensive option, which is also currently the only diesel engine that you'll find in a mid-sized truck that this vehicle shares with its sister vehicle, the GMC Canyon, because they're essentially both the same truck, that puts out 369 pound-foot of torque through a 6-speed transmission, both showing up the only engine that comes with the Frontier, which is a 4-liter V6 putting out 261 horsepower and 281 pound-foot of torque going through a 5-speed transmission. And if you really wanted to, you can also get a 6-speed manual with it as well. And in terms of fuel economy, it is once again a very similar story. The Colorado is surprisingly good on fuel, whereas the Frontier, believe it or not, is actually getting the same mileage as its older brother, the Titan. You know, the one that weighs 3 tons and has a 5.6-liter V8 in it. Other features that give the ZR2 an edge include the 2-inch lift, the remote start, as well as an application that will do everything that your remote can do, including start your truck. Chevrolet has also gone ahead and added a front locking differential on top of the rear that they both have, and also there are different body panels that come with the ZR2, unlike the PRO-4X where everything pretty much stays the same. For example, it is 3.5 inches wider because of the extra panels on the side, and the front fascia is almost completely different, the front bumper giving off Baja and Pre-Runner vibes. And all of these changes work together to make the ZR2 a more distinguishable truck from the lower trim levels, especially when paired with my personal favorite add-on for this truck. Yes, it is an option that this doesn't have, but you can get a full off-road sport bar with lights for the ZR2 that is just the cherry on top. As for the ride, the two most noticeable things right off the bat with the ZR2 compared to the PRO-4X is A, the extra ride height. I almost feel like I'm as high off the ground as a full full-size truck. And secondly is how light this truck feels. The steering is far lighter than with the Frontier, and it's a lot more comfortable to maneuver around day to day. On top of that, I'm less cramped on the inside. It feels like I'm getting a bit of extra space with the ZR2, and even though in the Frontier the engine is 400cc bigger, you can definitely notice the extra power that you're getting with the powertrain in the ZR2. And lastly, while the interior on both trucks are very plain, the infotainment system inside the Colorado is far superior to that of the Frontier, with the addition, of course, of the heated steering wheel and the heated back to your seat, as both trucks have heated seats, but it's just the base in the Frontier, not the back. And that is exactly why this comparison is so important. Both of them are just about to go through an update. The ZR2 getting a mid-gen refresh / facelift for 2021, and the Frontier for around 2022 is going to be getting an entirely new generation, finally moving on to the third generation, which I'm personally so excited for. Because the way you see it here, this is old enough now to have its own driver's license in some places. It came out in 2004, and the first kind of off-roady package it was given was the Nismo, and then that turned into this, the PRO-4X. Nissan had to do something over the years to keep it somewhat relevant, or else its competition like the Toyota Tacoma would come in and scoop up all the sales. But luckily, because this has been around for so long, they've had plenty of time to work on it and fine-tune it, which makes this such a reliable vehicle. On the other hand, the Colorado was redesigned and came back out onto the market in 2015, and then the ZR2 edition was released in 2017. This makes the ZR2 a modern-day take on what Nissan did with the Frontier over a decade and a half ago, giving us essentially a time machine, allowing us to answer the question, how have off-road trucks changed over the years, with two trucks that are still being manufactured. But that is by no means to say that the Frontier isn't a good truck. It's more or less just interesting than anything else to pit the Frontier up against the Colorado, because essentially they're from two different times, two different generations, if you will, and it's nice to see what has changed. So don't be fooled by the Frontier. It may not have a remote start, heated steering wheel, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, wireless phone charging, and a few other things that the Colorado has, but if you have one of these, you still have a very capable truck. After all, there's a reason that these still sell. In fact, the PRO-4X is actually the best-selling version of the Frontier. One of the biggest reasons why is if you get a Frontier PRO-4X with all the bells and whistles, you're pretty much only paying around $40,000 Canadian, but if you get a ZR2 with enough extras, you are getting a truck that is worth about $60,000. That is 50% more than the Frontier PRO-4X. So are you really getting a truck that is 50% better? The PRO-4X comes with a couple of features that you'd expect on a truck of this caliber that don't come on the ZR2. First and foremost, there's this little thing called fog lights that you get on the Frontier that you aren't seeing on the ZR2 version of the Colorado thanks to its unique front bumper. And secondly, a feature called an electric seat adjuster. You may have heard of it in the past. On the PRO-4X, you're getting a fully electric seat, whereas on the ZR2, the tilt is manual. You have to grab a plastic handle in order to tilt it forwards and backwards, which won't matter most of the time, but come on Chevy, you couldn't have made that electric as well? The PRO-4X also comes with the addition of a roof rack, which not only adds a very pleasing aesthetic to the truck, but also adds that extra functionality, especially when compared to the ZR2's bald head. It also handles better at higher speeds because of its smaller profile, and on that note, I had my 75-year young dad try to get into both his truck and then the higher Chevy. It was hard on the hips?
Yeah.
Is it much easier getting into the Frontier?
Oh, yes. Just gliding. A couple of inches.
And then the ZR2 not so much?
No. I have to think about it.
And yes, for those of you who are wondering, he did build all of the custom light bars and accessories you see on the Frontier by himself. Visibility out of the front is also improved on the Frontier because you don't have a giant fancy hood, which took me a little bit of getting used to on the ZR2. I think it looks fantastic, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely harder to see things directly in front of you with that fancy hood decoration. And on top of the superior approach angle of 32.6 degrees when compared to the ZR2's 25.3, the Pro-4X can also tow more. Now, to be fair to Chevy, the Colorado can tow and has a rating up to 7,700 pounds, but if you get the ZR2, which is what we're comparing, it can only do 5,000, which means that the Pro-4X takes the win at 6,100 pounds. A big difference, 1,100 pounds. I did the math. In truck talk, that is 61 cases of beer extra that you can tow with the Pro-4X that you couldn't with the ZR2. That's a lot of beer. And if it's still your thing, it even has a CD player. So as you can see, it can still be a sensible financial decision as well as a better lifestyle choice to go with the Pro-4X over the ZR2. And beyond anything else that I just mentioned, there are a loyal group of individuals that like the Frontier because it hasn't changed in over a decade and a half. This thing is pretty much bulletproof at this point. It's been fine-tuned so much over that time that this is a guaranteed good purchase. It's worth your money, $40,000 Canadian, and this thing will run forever. The ZR2, we just don't know yet. The current version of the Colorado is now 5 years old, and the ZR2 edition being just 3, so we really can't tell what they're going to be like after 250,000 clicks and 10 winters. In conclusion, even though this is less about pitting these trucks against each other and more about showing how the easily available technology that is required to make trucks like this has changed over the last decade and a half, would I have the Pro-4X or the ZR2? Well, after driving both several times over the last few years, I can honestly say I'm completely in love with the ZR2. In fact, I even looked into buying one myself, but decided not to as the refreshed version is around the corner and because world pandemic. The Frontier is still an amazing truck, and if you really aren't bothered about having the coolest off-roading mid-sized truck on the market, then go with the Frontier. It's still gonna handle the same trails, it's just easier to get into, easier to park, and it's not gonna burn as big of a hole in your pocket. But that's it. That's the Chevrolet Colorado ZR2 versus the Nissan Frontier Pro-4X. I cannot wait to do this again when both of the new versions of these trucks come out. If you want to see more on the ZR2, I will link underneath the like button a full comprehensive review and tour that I've put together, and a few more videos with the Frontier in it as well. Of course, a massive thank you to Jessica, the owner of this ZR2. She's a good friend and a fellow personal trainer. And if you want to check her out, you can see her Instagram that I've once again linked underneath the like button. Talking about the like button, if you like this video, drop a like. If you didn't, drop a dislike. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And of course, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to join our small but growing family, because once we hit 100,000 subscribers, I will be shaving all of this hair off of the top of my head, my lid for a kid, if you will, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Eventually.